Good afternoon and welcome to the Hummingbird Resources PLC Investor Update. Throughout this recorded update, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all the questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Dan Betts. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks a lot. And thanks everyone for dialing in. Today I've got myself on the call, Tom Hill, and actually we've got James Husband on the call as Ed Montgomery is having a technical issue dialing into this forum. But so James works with Ed on corporate development and PR, and will be able to answer any questions in that area as well. So what we wanted to do today is we wanted to really go through the announcement on Friday and give an update as to what it meant, because I think there was a bit of confusion as a result of that announcement. So in the presentation, we wanted to go through what we meant by the group-wide review that we're conducting and the strategic review, and what actually we're doing in terms of leadership transition and my role, and then give an update on the financial position of the company and the Kouroussa gold mine, and then we will open to the floor for any questions, and we're available to answer any questions that people might have for as long as it will take. So if I can just get my slide to go down. Yes. So in terms of the leadership transition, so the first thing is myself, the role of Chief Executive Officer and me moving to Chairman. I think the first thing to say is this is a considered decision, and it's the right time to do it. I mean, I started Hummingbird 17 years ago. It was a grassroots exploration company, and we've grown it to a company with 2 gold mines in 2 different countries, a development project in the 3rd, operations really all over West Africa, employing 2,500 people, and we should be running at a run rate of over 200,000 ounces of gold a year and revenues of sort of nearly $500 million. I'm immensely proud of that, but at the same time, I think without airing all our dirty laundry, you have to recognize your weaknesses and opportunities. And I think Hummingbird needs now to evolve into a more mature organization that can capitalize on that amazing platform and those amazing opportunities. And I think to do that, we need to commit to that development and that change from the top down, and that means me. And so we need a new CEO who has the skills and the experience to take that forward. And this isn't me jumping ship. I'm still going to be involved, and I'm still passionate about Hummingbird and passionate about its future. And I think my skills will be best served as looking after the strategic development and growth of the business and managing some of those key stakeholder relationships that we've spent nearly 2 decades building up. In terms of the actual process, we have appointed Lincoln Strategic to run a search to find the next Chief Executive Officer. That has commenced. I guess the process will take a few months. Most people who would be eligible for this sort of position will have commitments, and there'll be time restraints, but the search is ongoing. Additionally, in terms of leadership transition, Mr. Umar Tagoini will be joining the board of Hummingbird with immediate effect. So Umar is probably well known to people in the West African gold mining space. He was a senior executive at IAM Gold, working through many departments in the company there. He has tremendous knowledge of the West African gold mining landscape. He's technical, but he's also got good corporate, commercial, and political affiliations. So we're looking forward to having Umar's support and guidance and advice on the board. Obviously, Umar is the chairman of Nyoka Resources, which is also Hummingbird's biggest shareholder. So a signal of support and intent from Nyoka to see Hummingbird through this period into, to deliver on the potential that it has. So if I can just... Right. So in terms of the group-wide review and what actually we're doing, so we are in the process of appointing an internationally recognized advisory firm. I can't actually tell you the name of them because we haven't signed the engagement letter yet, but as soon as we have, we will. But it's a well-known group who are experts in this process and done it many times before. The process is pretty simple, right? They will work with us to find a chief transition officer. The chief transition officer will be responsible for overseeing the analysis of the review of both the corporate and operational functions of the business. And then they will be appointed, once we've agreed that, with an executive capacity to make recommendations to the board and oversee those changes once they're approved by the board. So the process will really be 2 stages. Find the right chief transformation officer to work with us, and then to conduct that review and execute that review so that we can, I'm not sure if right size is the right word, but we can reshape Hummingbird to be more accountable and more efficient in its operations. And I think it will range from, org charts and accountability of key people, but also operationally in terms of ensuring we have the right cost structures in place and that everything is working as it should be. If I try and hold on. Right. So in terms of the strategic review that we announced, the strategic review is really going to focus on reviewing our portfolio of assets. So at the moment, it's pretty clear that everybody looks at Hummingbird as a company that has financial challenges because of the slow ramp up at Carusa. And as I'm sure Tom will speak to in a minute, whilst we do have those challenges and whilst it is immensely frustrating, we do have support and we do have an ability to navigate our way through those challenges. But what's clear is with a market cap of something like £50 million, if you add up the combined NPVs of the 3 assets Hummingbird has at this gold price today, it's something like $2 billion. So there's obviously a crazy mismatch. As everyone looks at financial stress and immediate liquidity, they're not looking at value. And what we need to do is we need to move back to understanding and getting Hummingbird valued properly. And that's what I mean by the strategic review. We need to look at all these assets in isolation and together, and to see if there is an opportunity to rationalize our portfolio, either individually or together, and to just assess what is out there in the market and if it is appropriate or not to make changes to our portfolio and to Hummingbird going forward. So I think rather than this being some dramatic statement that Hummingbird is going to commit to selling mines or anything like that, what we're saying is it's an opportunity to take stock, full 360 review of the business. Are these the right assets for the company? Is now the right time to hold them? Should we be looking at other assets to grow? Should we be divesting of assets? Let's see what happens by running that process. So that's what I mean by the strategic review. So I think then, Tom, my thing is playing up slightly here, but then I think, Tom, we're over to the financial side of the business. So if I can hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. So I'd like to just firstly talk about our key focus operationally is to get Carusa into commercial production. It has been delayed, but we're in a good position to achieve this in Q4. We just completed the mill reline. The wet season is coming to an end. The pits are drying out. We're able to access the high-grade fresh rock in both stage 1 and stage 2 of pit 4, our main pit at Carusa. And we're working closely with our 2 mining contractors, Corica and Atasi, to achieve the necessary phase positions to enable us to get to commercial production. And in terms of financial situation, as you can see in the announcement, our largest shareholder has advanced us a further $20 million on top of the original $10 million they advanced earlier this year. This has provided us this is a strong show of financial support. Our biggest shareholder is very, very passionate about the underlying value of the 3 assets we have and wants to see those progress for everyone's benefit. This $30 million advance, the intention is this will be rolled into a gold loan, and we're speaking to other parties about potentially upsizing that gold loan to provide additional liquidity to support the growth of the business. No, going forwards, the key thing is the financial stability of the group, which with our biggest shareholder advancing $20 million, and also our very supportive banker, Chorus Bank, which have historically been very flexible and supportive of the whole business, we feel we're in a strong position going forwards. As Dan said, we're taking the opportunity to have a group-wide review of both like optimize performance and support the growth. It is, we've grown sort of in the way we have grown, and now it's time to actually reassess that and get ourselves ready for the next phase. We are confident in achieving commercial production at Kouroussa finally by the end of this year, and at that stage we'll be producing around 200,000 ounces per annum. And as you said, look, as part of there are some changes, and it's time to make those changes. And that's, if you don't change, you don't grow. And we're very excited about the next phase.
Thanks, Tom. I think it really is just sort of that short and simple, really, but I'm sure there will still be lots of questions. So I think, James, I don't know if you've got questions you already had or whether they're live questions, but let's just turn it over to Q&A and we'll do our best to answer any questions people have.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, no, we've had a number of questions come in prior to the call, as well as a number that have happened live. So what we'll do is we'll run through the pre-received questions, and then we'll sort of touch on some of the newer questions that have come in as we sort of run through the presentation. So firstly, Dan, what are the expected outcomes of the group-wide review, and what is the timeline for its completion?
Okay, well, in terms of timeline, I think it's give or take, 2 or 3 weeks to find the appropriate transformation officer, depending what's available in the market, and then probably a month to 6 weeks of review, and then implementation phase, which will obviously be as quickly as possible. So I'd like to think by the end of the year, we're starting to see tangible changes. In terms of the outcomes, I think, I'm sure that there will be a focus on where things have got a bit loose in terms of both accountability and costs and cost savings. I think Hummingbird's management team is actually quite light. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying there's going to be some dramatic upheaval in terms of headcount. I think more it's a case of how do we make ourselves more effective and execute and deliver more effectively. Whether it's contract management, processes, reporting, or just normal processes and functions of a mature and well-established business.
Thanks, Dan. Could you just give a bit more of an overview as to sort of the role the CTO will play within this strategic review?
Yeah, so as the Chief Transformation Officer's role is to run the process. So it is to review the business, conduct a thorough review across all areas of the business, and come up with recommendations that they will, together with us, we'll work through those recommendations, and once approved, they will then be responsible for enacting them. Thanks.
In terms of sort of operational changes, obviously we note in the press release that we're bringing on an experienced mining professional at Kouroussa, but will there be any other operational changes at Yanfolila during this period?
Not in the immediate. Not right now, today, immediately. Again, we need to sort of wait to see the results of the review. I mean, at Kouroussa, obviously there's a more pressing need to get volumes and operational performance up and running. And so the immediate addition of extra support in that capacity is clearly needed. But in terms of future perfect, I think let's not second guess the results of the review.
Thanks. So moving on to the sort of the leadership transition side of things, what qualities are you looking for in a new CEO, and when do you expect them to be in place by?
Well, I think as soon as possible is the answer to when do I hope they're in place. When do I expect? I don't really know, because I've never run a search like this, and it will take however long it takes, but I guess 2 or 3 months. is realistic, and then it slightly depends on the conditions of their current situation. In terms of what characteristics we as a board are looking for, not just me, somebody who is tougher than me, being blunt, somebody who is meticulous and focused on detail with an operational background, who somebody once said to me, mines aren't born, they're dragged kicking and screaming into this world. And it's somebody to do that. It's somebody to not yield and capitalize on this tremendous platform.
Thanks, Dan. And sort of with that in mind, one of the questions is, what would be your role as executive chairman?
Well, I mean, look, again, let's not second guess the results of this review, because I'm open-minded. Like, my focus and my only objective is for Hummingbird to be a success, and I will support that however and whatever that means. So I would imagine my ongoing role as chairman will be to focus on key stakeholder relationships that we've spent nearly 20 years building up, strategic oversight, and helping to guide and support the operations and the senior management of the company. But, for me, this isn't, I know when you announce something like this, it's like, oh, wow, that's big change. But for me, it's not really. It's a natural evolution. And I mean, I think people that know me well know I'm more entrepreneurial, and the operations of Hummingbird have now reached such a stage, they need seasoned industry professional leadership right at the top. And I think it's a natural evolution. I think, people hang on too long.
Thanks, Dan. Moving to the portfolio and strategic review. So what are the status with the current project discussions around Dugby?
So at Dugby, Pasofino has received a non-binding offer. I can't tell you who it's from because of confidentiality in the offer, but they've received a non-binding offer of $75 million of cash, and that party is currently undergoing a month of detailed DD. So I would anticipate a more formal binding offer coming in short order. They do have an exclusivity period during that period of time, so Pasofino isn't out seeking any further interest, but that's not to say there isn't further interest, and it's what's beyond our control is beyond our control. So, this share price, I think that equates to about $43 million of value to Hummingbird, which is, almost our market cap for, frankly, what I would say is a derisory valuation for Pasofino. I mean, the NPV of that asset's over $1.5 billion at this gold price. And I personally love Liberia. I think it's totally pro-mining. It's got producing gold mines. The government wants to see investment. It's a lot easier than some other jurisdictions in the region, without mentioning names. So I think it's an unbelievable opportunity. And whether Pasofino ends up completing that offer or not, there's certainly interest, and that gives us options. Options have a non-negative value, I think, is the way to look at it. So let's assess our options.
And sort of talking about those additional options, are there any other potential asset divestments and ongoing discussions?
Well, look, that's part of the reason why we are talking about a strategic review, because we have had a number of informal discussions with a number of parties about Hummingbird as a whole, about individual assets, about different mines, and it's all been slightly ad hoc and all been slightly just informal. And I think that now is a time to just take stock and actually see if any of those conversations are serious or not, and if they have any value.
Thanks, Dan. Moving to operations. So what has been the main cause of the delay in achieving commercial production at Kouroussa?
Well, the main reason we haven't hit commercial production is that we have not mined the necessary volumes in the key areas at Kouroussa. And that's why we bring in some additional operational skills, and we're working very closely with our two mining contractors to achieve that going forwards.
Thanks, Tom. And so what impact will the mill relining as well as the sort of end of the wet season have on production?
The mill reline, this was basically potentially up to a 2-week shutdown. We managed to complete it well within that time frame. This means the mill is good for at least 6 months before it needs relining again. And so that's good to go. The end of the wet season, the pits are now drying out nicely, and so we can access that fresh rock and put that into the plant as quickly as possible.
So, thanks, Tom. So, in terms of what is the current production rate at Carusa, and sort of what is the commercial run rate target?
We're targeting around 120,000 ounces per annum. 100 to 120,000 ounces per annum is when we're in full production.
Thanks, Tom. How have delays at Carusa impacted on our overall 2024 production guidance targets?
Well, I think people have seen the impact we've had so far, and clearly now the focus is getting Carusa into commercial production as quickly as possible and start generating significant, strong cash flows from it.
Thanks, Tom. I think I'll also add to sort of the answer that we're kind of ongoing. We're currently reviewing our guidance. We are still on track to meet it, but we'll provide a closer update in the Q3 results later this month. Just to jump onto Carusa a bit more, to what extent the results of the grade control drilling program at Carusa has seen reconciliation with the resource model?
The grade control results in the fresh rock, high grade fresh rock, are very, very good. They're very, very reassuring, giving us a lot of confidence in the ore body.
And then, sort of, what has been the impact of the artisanal mining, especially at Carusa?
Well, the top benches of oxide were very heavily depleted. We knew this as identified as a risk way before we even started mining it. So the target was to mine all that early before we started production. However, as the well documented delays in mobilization of the mining contractor meant that we were left having to feed that material when we should have been feeding some fresh rock.
Thanks, Tom. Quickly moving to the financial side of things. What are the non-equity financing options that are currently under consideration?
Well, our intention is to roll this 30 million advance from CIG into a gold loan, and we're talking about some other parties about potentially upsizing that. We're also looking at offtakes and royalties and streaming, basically just to say what is going to be the best thing to provide us some more financial firepower to grow the business.
Thanks, Tom. I'm just sort of running through the final few pre-selected questions. Then we can touch on some of the questions asked throughout this Q&A session. I think the final one is, so how will the 30 million loan facility be used to support operations?
Well, 10 million we've already had previously. So the 30 million is basically a very, very strong show of support from our major shareholder, and basically that is to assist us basically getting Carusa into commercial production as quickly as possible and meeting some of our short-term liquidity needs.
Thanks, Tom. And sort of one further question. Could you provide an update on the current hedging policy at Hummingbird and sort of the impacts of that moving forward?
We've got approximately 34,000 ounces left in that hedge, basically, which has a cap on the gold price of about $2,230 an ounce. That's spread over the next few months and ends in April 2025. With hindsight, I wish we'd never hedged it, but we did it for the right reasons at the right time. And I'd much rather have hedged and the gold price gone up than not hedged and the gold price gone down.
Thanks, Tom. Just trying to make sure. So one question on the Kamana East Underground. So when do we expect it to hit commercial production? Obviously noting that development has likely been impacted by cash flow requirements.
Well, we're working on the underground. I would expect to see that basically coming into commercial production in the second half of next year.
Thanks, Tom. And I again add to that, we'll provide more clarity on timings and sort of the impact of that in our Q3 production update later in the year.
Yes, and I expect to sort of have development all before we get to that stage.
Can you provide an update on the situation in Yanfolila, noting the recent news out of Barrick?
basically, the government of Mali embarked on an industry-wide review of the mining sector earlier this year. We, along with other mining companies, have engaged on that on a transparent and open basis. But I think it's very clear the government wants to align everyone onto the new mining code, which I said there's a lot of logic for that, and we're continuing to discuss with the government the implications of that.
Thanks, Tom. So a question for Dan. When we talk about firepower to grow the business, what form of growth are you envisaging for Hummingbird? Once you have Cruiser in production, obviously we should be heavily cash flow positive. And what's the goal moving forward?
Well, the goal to grow the business immediately is to sort out and strengthen our balance sheet and get production up to where it needs to be from our own producing mines. And, that's been a big challenge. So I think the focus needs to be on that in the short term. But, obviously, if you were to imagine a scenario where we're cash positive and the balance sheet is stronger, well, we have a great development asset in Liberia. It's still controlled by Hummingbird. And there are lots of opportunities that we see and we would continue to evaluate. But I mean, our ambition has always been to build a robust, diversified mid-tier gold mining company, and that remains the case.
Thanks, Dan. I think looking at the questions, I think we've covered most of them. And if a number of them are looking at sort of Q3 numbers, which obviously, as I said previously, we'll be announcing sort of the end of October, where we'll provide a lot more clarity moving forward. So maybe I'll pass on to you, Dan, just for some final comments, and then we can sign off.
Well, I think my final comments are just that I think this is a natural evolution, and it's an opportunity for Hummingbird to make a step change to be a more mature, robust, diversified mid-tier gold mining company. I'm actually enthused and excited by the opportunities ahead. And whilst the operations have been extremely challenging for the year, we are on the cusp of transformational change, and I think rather than just words, I think demonstrating that we're committed to that change and delivering on it is important, and that's what we're doing.
Perfect. I'll just jump in and thank you all for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Hummingbird Resources PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.